And I see Deb, who's here from our committee. And Heather, when we open it up for questions, I mean, if you want to unmute the person or have them use the chat feature, whatever you prefer.
Okay, I think the chat feature is easier.
Okay, and can we save those questions so that I can put them on frequently asked questions?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Hey, there's Mr. Prentice. Hello, Mr. Prentice.
Hello, good evening. How are you?
I'm good. My phone says it's 6:28, so I'll wait the next 2 minutes. Some of you might want to take a ride for ice cream because it's so hot, so I'll try to start on time. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Melinda Smith. If you don't know me, I'm the superintendent of schools, and I've invited some folks from my central office team that are on the call tonight. William Birch, our facilities director, Christopher Jones, our pupil service director. We have the principal of Mary R. Fisher with us. So hello, Larry.
How are you?
Heather Burns, she's our technology director. Dawn Goodwin, she is on our reentry committee, along with Deb Spinelli, and Shannon Grauer. She is our lead nurse and someone I have really depended upon putting together the reopening plan. Obviously, this is a health emergency, and you can imagine that we're really relying on her expertise and her resources. Did I forget anyone else from the committee? I don't want to miss anyone. If I did, just let me know and I will introduce you. So I thought we'd start this evening, and this is a parent forum specifically for Mary Fisher, and that's why we have Mr. Prentice here. We have our pupil service director here, and then who knows the facility any better than Bill Birch. So questions around the facility we can direct to him. But I wanted to refresh everyone and go over the plan really quick. If you weren't able to get in the other night, because we had a few glitches with our Zoom account, you know, I highly apologize, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some of these questions this evening. But I'm going to start with the PowerPoint that I presented to the Board of Ed the other night. And I'm just going to briefly go over that PowerPoint. It is on the district's website, and I believe we emailed it out. If you haven't received a copy of it, you can put it in your email in the chat, and we can certainly send it to you, but it is on the district website. So the district was charged by the Office of the Governor and the Commissioner Miguel Cardona to come up with a reentry plan, which was aligned to a guidance document that was sent out by the state on June 29th. So we presented this plan to the Board of Ed. It was presented as a draft plan because things are changing by the minute. If anyone had a chance to catch Governor Lamont's 4 o'clock press conference today, it now seems that districts will be given some flexibility in their reopening plans. How that impacts this reentry plan is yet to be seen. So back in March, when we closed down on March 13th, that was a district decision to close school. Subsequent to that, there was a governor's order that all schools remain closed. And I think that happened the following Monday. And so in April, we believed as a team that school would soon reopen, and we needed to start making plans to reopen our facility. And we started to talk about PPE equipment and disinfectant and all of that. And we started to be proactive and start to stockpile some of those items. I was working with a core team, obviously my directors at central office and some key people in the district, and we started to do that work. And then the team was expanded in June because we were told that we were going to be getting a guidance document to reopen school. And we wanted to include all of our administrators. We wanted to have parents. We wanted to have teachers' voice. And so those were added in. And then the document came out on June 29th. And then we were told that we had to put a plan in place, and that got submitted to the state last Friday. I want you all to know that the Board of Education and myself did write a letter to Commissioner Cardona and let him know that while we have a plan in place that we feel good about, the cost of implementing that plan is somewhat staggering, and he needed to, we kind of urged him to identify what types of resources were going to help the community of Thompson pay for a reopening of schools. And so you can see that our membership of that committee really expanded. And I thank everyone every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. These folks have been meeting for at least a month and trying to help us shape our reentry plan. So in that document, which is called Adapt, Advance, Achieve, Connecticut's Plan to Learn and Grow, there are requirements in the document, which means they're mandatory. And then there are items in the document that refer to as guidance, which means they strongly encourage us to, but it's a recommendation, not necessarily a mandate. So one of the examples around what is a requirement, and I like to put this up front in the presentation, is that face masks are required for all faculty, staff, and students. And that is a mouth and nose covering that we're mandated to wear in school. Now, we have not yet received strong specific guidance from our health department or our legal counsel. What happens if a student can't wear a mask? What happens if a faculty or staff member can't wear a mask? What accommodations are reasonable and what accommodations that we put in place are safe? And so those are some of the things that we need to consider over the next couple of weeks. We were also required to put together 3 learning programs. We were required to put in a full school model. That means all of our students in preschool through grade 12 would be on site learning together for 177 days. And that 177 days is a reduction of the school year by 3. Typically, we have a 180-day school year. They have given us the state has given us 3 additional professional development days up front to help our teachers plan for a fluid mode of instruction, which will include on-site instruction, and then it's going to include some students on-site and some students off-site distant learning, because we have to reduce the capacity in the building by 50%. And then if we have to shift over to a distant learning model for all of our students, pre-K to 12, very similar to what we did in March. However, I believe the district will be much more organized and the lessons will be much more robust, because we've had time to align the curriculum and think through some of the work that we have to do. So the models are everybody on site, 50% on site and 50% distant learn, and then the full distant learning model. And here I give basically what that means. I also want to say that parents have the choice, and you should have received or will receive this week a form to let us know what you're thinking about what plan is best for you and your children. And so it's the 3 plans, but the other thing I explain on that form, that if you choose to homeschool your child, which is very different from distant learning. Distant learning means the district is responsible to provide instruction, responsible for the curriculum, and responsible for the resources that your child needs to be successful in school. If and your child is considered enrolled in Thompson Public School, and a parent has the option at any time, if they choose to start the school year on site and things don't work out well, you can certainly shift to a distant learning program. If you're on a distant learning program and you feel like it's time for your child to come back, you can do that as well. You just have to give us a week's notice so we can arrange and make sure that the teacher's prepared to take another child into the classroom. But a homeschool child means that you're withdrawing your child from Thompson Public Schools, that you will be responsible for the curriculum, you will be responsible for the instruction, and you will be responsible for any resources. So that's the difference between the distant learning program and if you choose to homeschool your child. I wanted that to be clear because some folks get confused. Although I do know that in some instances, it did feel a little bit like it was homeschooling. Accommodations for students with special needs. In any of those programs, we're going to make the appropriate accommodations, and you will work with your IEP team at each level for your child in regards to any kind of accommodations that need to be made within those programs. The one thing that we are pretty adamant about is that we have some students with intense needs and services, and if a child is in a self-contained model or the Bradley-Windham County model, and we switch to a hybrid, we more than likely will keep those students in school 4 days a week. That hybrid model means one group of students, the A group, would come to school on Monday, Tuesday, stay home and distant learn on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the B group would come in on Thursday, Friday, and they would distant learn on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. On Wednesday, everyone is home, all teachers, all staff, so that the building can get a deep clean. And then let's look at our technology. We are finally one-to-one. You might not have the device yet, but we are setting dates that all of our students will have a device. We had to scramble in March and April to get devices out from Mary Fisher that were typically used in school out into children's hands. In some cases, multiple children live in a family. They only had one device. That caused all sorts of havoc. Many parents made comments about that. Because we had some grant money, we were able to buy brand new touchscreen Chromebooks for pre-K, K, and 1. And then repurpose our Chromebooks from the high school because they also received a grant of all new laptops. So everyone in August will be issued a district laptop. And if you need a hotspot, you need to let us know and we will get that for you if you don't have internet service at home. And then we are hoping for our distant learning program. Heather Burns is working on this now. Classrooms being set up to live stream instruction. Teachers are getting their personal Zoom accounts so that they can live stream instruction live and also pre-record if they choose to do that and upload those to Zoom as well. All teachers are required to use Google as their curriculum home base. That I heard loud and clear from parents that it was very confusing for them to 3 different children. They started off in the same different place. They were using, teachers were using different platforms. So now we have asked all of our teachers, the home base is Google, and from there they can put links to other websites or other programs that they would like you to go to. And the week of August 24th will be a full week of professional development for our teachers to help refine our distant learning program. So what do the classrooms look like? Well, at elementary, you can see that that's a typical first grade classroom, and those desks are socially distanced by 6 feet. The chart on the left has already been changed. We've had teachers who want to be next to some colleagues because of shared students. So we're making sure that we're making those adjustments as we speak. The middle school and the high school will look primarily the same. The one thing we can't do at the high school level is we are not creating small classroom cohorts. It's virtually impossible to do that. You will hear some flexibility from the governor around high schools. I believe that we do have a small high school, and when I analyzed class sizes, the high school, quite frankly, didn't have class sizes that were too alarming. We had some that were at 20 and 21, but we can move those students into larger areas like the auditorium and larger labs and the library and bigger spaces that we have in the campus. So that's what those classrooms will look like. We took out all the non-essential furniture. So all the things that make a classroom homey and warm had to be removed so that we could put ample space there. Also, we are waiting for the preschool and kindergarten teachers to come back. There are some guidance from the Office of Early Childhood around what those classrooms should look like. Removing rugs and some other pieces of equipment might not be appropriate for that age level. They're certainly not going to sit at a desk all day long. And so we have to make sure that we're allowing for early childhood classrooms to have a setup that's safe, but I need that input from the preschool teachers. And so a class rotation schedule will be developed to limit the number of students passing in corridors. For the most part, there will be scheduled bathroom times. Obviously, if a child needs to go to the bathroom, they can go. We will have scheduled mask breaks so that students can go outside. The fields and playscapes have been identified per school and assigned. So that way, each school has certain places outside that they can go to. And Mr. Prentice will be creating that schedule with his leadership team. Then about transportation. So in the document, they talk about low transmission risk and moderate transmission risk. And students and their families must follow transportation checklists before leaving for the bus stop in the morning. That means looking at the COVID wellness checklist, making sure your child has a mask. All students, all drivers will be required to wear a mask. If your child gets to the bus and they've forgotten their mask, which could easily happen, the buses will be supplied with additional masks. The buses will operate at near capacity. We are looking now on, and in that questionnaire that goes home to parents this week, we're asking how many parents are going to take advantage of bus service. That information that comes back, we might be able to adjust some of our bus routes and actually minimize the amount of students that are on each bus. But the buses, there's no limit outside of the bus capacity limit in the guidance document. We are going to ask our safety officers to assist the drivers for the first couple of weeks of school with seating arrangements in case a child doesn't have a mask or they don't know how to put it on. We just feel it's important to have somebody else on the bus, another adult on the bus. To be honest with you, Thompson doesn't have bus monitors on buses. We had a few that circled through last year when we had a few concerns, but to put a bus monitor on every bus full time is fiscally impossible. So we at least want to set a routine at the beginning of the school year. And then when we shift to a 50% hybrid model, that's where you get in the moderate transmission risk. Everybody's going to wear a mask, but then the ridership will be down by 50%. Important to know, between the secondary run in the morning and the elementary run, those two tiers, we are going to stop the buses and have them disinfected. I've worked that out with the Dadco bus company. So it may impact the school start time, but only by a minute or two. I'm working with Dadco now to get the bus routes all settled and get that information out to you probably by mid-August. And then food service, breakfast and lunch will be in the classroom at Mary R. Fisher, which is great for you this year. Last year, we piloted free lunch. We always had free breakfast since I've came. We had qualified for grant funding back in the day, 3 years ago, but now Mary Fisher has qualified for free lunch for everyone. So we're going to try to pilot free lunch next year at the middle school. So if you have a elementary and a middle school student, lunch and breakfast will be free. Lunches will be delivered to the classrooms. Children will eat in the classrooms. Operations. Right now, our buildings are in really good shape. They've been completely disinfected. What's going on inside the building, and Bill can talk a little bit more about this, is there's a lot of furniture being moved. We have split the gymnasiums in half, and half of the gyms are being used for furniture storage coming out of the classrooms, because we hope that once this all eases up, we'll be able to return to a normal classroom layout. Our PPE equipment, our masks, our face shields, gowns, gloves, thermometers, desk shields, for students that might need additional shield. They've been ordered and most have been delivered. You will see that when you come into the school building that you will be stopped at the front foyer. Parents will not be allowed inside the school building. There will be plexiglass installed in all our school offices. And most of your parent meetings will be done virtually. Signs will be are being printed and they're being installed as we speak to remind children to wash their hands. What are the COVID symptoms? Socially distance. We have decals for the floors. So which pattern, traffic patterns, especially at the high school, should students walk? Bill is working hard on the ventilation system, which is really important to be cleaned and serviced and working at optimum capacity. Our water systems have been flushed. The bubblers will be closed. Students can bring their own water bottles. However, our food service will have cold water bottles available for our students throughout the day. We are using standard protocols for cleaning that are developed by CDC guidelines. We've increased our daytime custodial staff by transferring an evening custodian to days, and we're going to have to add a couple of sub-custodians because we want to make sure that the play equipment outside, especially at Mary Fisher, and the little trikes and everything that the children are using outside get wiped down after every use. And then, of course, the really disinfecting that has to happen between the AM and the PM preschool sessions. We are thinking about ordering tents to have them outside for students to take mask breaks. And we are upgrading the courtyard at the high school and putting a tent there to make sure that that space can be used as an outside classroom, especially for mask breaks. And then our health monitoring plan, like I said before, the face coverings are going to be essential. We have purchased the face shields and the desk dividers. That might be an appropriate accommodation for folks that have exemptions. I haven't gotten clear guidance from the Department of Health yet on that, but we want to make sure that there is some way that we can accommodate for students and faculty and staff that can't wear a mask. All of our students should be assessed at home against the CDC checklist to be sure that you're well before you come to school. We're going to have a lot of hand washing going on throughout the day, and sure that will cut into some instructional time, but we find that that is one of the most important indicators of us staying healthy is to keep our hands clean. And we have set up an isolation room for ill students, faculty, and staff. That isolation room is at the middle school. If a child is ill or a faculty member is ill, they will exit the building with the school nurse. The school nurse will enter the building from the exterior of Thompson Middle School. We're going to hire a CNA to supervise anyone that's in that room that's ill. The child's parent or spouse would have already been contacted, and information would have been given as to what symptoms the child may have. When we start school, we've been given guidance from the Northeast District Department of Health that we have to be really strict with those COVID symptoms. And so we're going to be pretty rigid about COVID symptoms and sending students home. And so for the parents that are listening, having some backup for that, having someone that we can call in case you're at work that can pick up your child if some of those symptoms are evident. And then we are all going to receive a lot of health training from Shannon Grauer, our lead nurse, and other officials during that week of August 24th, so that we're all on the same page with our health protocols. And then the Northeast District Department of Health has specified definitions of what is a case, a suspected case, or a contact, or a close contact. And then they've also put in a draft procedure as to what we need to do if a child or a faculty member becomes ill. We need to call them immediately, and then they're going to help guide us on whether or not that full classroom needs to be quarantined, whether the school needs to close, and what the parameters are going to be around each individual issue that comes up that's COVID related. And so they're working on a draft procedure with us now. And then the big thing is communicating to parents and making sure that you know what's going on. So right now, we have a pretty robust call, text, email, newsletters, website, social media posts. Our handbooks will have an addendum that will relate specifically to COVID issues. And whenever we can, we'll grab Tiger Talk and be on WINY. Tonight is the first of parent forums. Our Board of Education meeting, like I said, was a little goofed up. So this is the first night that I'm gonna be quiet, turn it over to anyone who has a question. You can put it in the chat box. And as of tomorrow morning, I'll be starting to, I know there's a few questions on the reentry at Thompson Public School. We're gonna start to answer those questions to families and then take those answers and post them on the website. So I am going to stop sharing my screen, and there's 18 questions in the chat. So, okay, I'll start reading them, and then if somebody wants to speak, you can just raise your hand and let Heather know, and she will unmute you after we get through this. Reading and OT along with speech. Does the mask on the bus apply to kids who may not be able to wear one? Yes, the mask on the bus does apply to students who may not be able to wear one. However, I don't know if an accommodation can be made that we move students to the front of the bus for those that cannot wear a mask. I'm waiting for some guidance on that, because I do know that we're going to have to handle each situation case by case. So if you have an issue and your child has an issue and cannot wear a mask, I'm going to ask for you. The offices at school open up next Monday. The offices are open from 8 to 2. You can either send your building principal an email, or you can call the school. The secretaries will be there, and you can let them know that you wish to speak to the principal and explain your situation and your child's individual case. And we can work on trying to put some accommodation in place that will keep your child comfortable, but also I have to worry about the safety of others. So that's the kind of fine line we're teetering on, and I am really anxious to find out if there's going to be very specific guidance or it's going to be left case by case. Shannon, I don't know if there's anything else you've heard this week in regard to that. If Heather, if you could unmute Chris and Bill and Shannon and Mr. Prentice, I would appreciate it.
I haven't gotten any new guidance regarding that yet.
Yeah, okay. So we imagine within the next week or two, we're going to have more information, but it would be great if your building principal knew, the students in their school that might have concerns if they come back and cannot wear a mask. Is that still going to happen? Absolutely. Children need to be outside. Are cloth masks acceptable? Yes, right, Shannon? Any kind of mask, right? Okay.
Cloth face coverings.
It has to cover the nose and mouth.
Correct.
Will pre-K and K have the same start date as the other grades this year, August 31st? I have not spoken to the pre-K teachers about this. Larry, have you?
No, we haven't. I know you and I had discussed very briefly about them also getting those several days before the anticipated start of school to work on any plans that they have. But I haven't
Right.
spoken with them specifically about that.
In my mind, it would make some sense that we all start at the same time, because I think we're going to have a limited number of days up front in the school. I mean, this is just my gut feeling, up front in the school year. And if we can establish good routines right off the bat and have children feel comfortable knowing who their child's teacher is, I'd like to see them start as soon as possible, but we can talk to the pre-K and K teachers and we will get back to you on that one. Who do we contact for children with food allergies if they choose to get lunch? That is the school nurse, correct, Shannon?
Yes,
Yep.
we
And
work
so,
closely with the head of the food services.
and every teacher has a list, and every anybody that's going to deliver to that classroom would know, right?
Correct.
Okay. What would happen if a person, child, or parent refuses to wear the mask? So that's going to really depend. If obviously parents aren't coming into the building, so that's not going to be a real issue unless the parent doesn't want their child to wear the mask. The child doesn't want if a parent doesn't want their child to wear the mask and there's no medical issue or real diagnosed disability, then the option would be to stay home and distant learn. That would be the option. With the start of school comes the common cold season. This is a good one for you, Shannon. How will it be handled for children who have a cold? Can they still attend school? Are the numbers of acceptable sick days for children increased this year? Yeah, so I'll start off by saying, unless you and your child are completely disconnected from school, the attendance committees aren't going to harass you. We know that kids are going to be absent more frequently this upcoming year, and some of it will be because we're sending them home for illnesses that typically, like allergies, we would allow them to remain in school. But Shannon, you want to elaborate on that?
Yes, because we won't be able to discern if it is COVID-19 symptoms or a regular cold, the student will be sent home.
Yes, yes. Okay. And then how will lunch be handled? Will students be washing their desks before they eat? And since they are working and eating on the same surfaces, yes, I would imagine that we're going to wipe down the desks. I don't know if we're going to have the students do that or we have a custodian come in, but the desk has to be clean before they eat lunch, obviously. And they have to wash their hands before they eat and after they eat. And then can you elaborate on what is required if your child has asthma and can't wear a mask? Does the state and or school require a written diagnosis from the doctor? So right now, the governor's order does not require us to ask for a doctor's note. And that's what I really need to get specific guidance on. Do I ask a parent to get a note from the doctor, or do I just work with the parent individually and based on what the school nurse knows about a child and their medical history? So there's more to come on whether or not I should send you back to the doctor and ask for a doctor's note or not. And that is some guidance I have not received yet. So I think that is a real concern. So Becky Kaya says, how are you going to address heat and temperatures in the classroom, especially when fans will not be used? No one said fans would not be used. Fans can be used, but they have to be blowing out. So we can't have the oscillating fans going back and forth in the classroom. The fans have to actually be turned toward the window and the air needs to be pulled out. Depending upon if it was hot like it is today, I can tell you right now, there would be an early release. There is no way I would be able to keep faculty, students, and staff in a classroom with a hot mask on and the temperatures are at 100 degrees. I think I'm going to have to play it by ear, see how things go, but just know that there could be a possibility of early release days if the temperatures in the classroom get to the point where I feel it's unsafe. And so that will be a day-by-day situation, but that is possible. We only have a few areas in the entire campus that are actually air conditioned. You know, back in the day, no one saw a need for air conditioners in schools. And now, you know, our weather patterns have changed, and September can sometimes be a very hot month. So there is no AC. I'll tell you where there's AC. There's AC in the offices. There's AC in the libraries, I believe, right, Bill?
Correct.
And then that wing in the high school, correct?
5 classrooms in the high school, 5 new classrooms.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. So there is not. Please scroll all the way to the top. There was a number of questions shortly after the call began. Let's see. Heather, can you scroll up and see if I missed something?
Let me see which one. I did see a question about a parent that said, due to the number of kids accessing their internet service at home, they keep getting bumped off. So what I would recommend is maybe upgrading your wireless router. If that doesn't work and you don't have the capability to do that, you could always email the principal or myself for a hotspot.
And we passed out a good 20 hotspots, didn't we, last year?
We did, yes.
Yeah, so if you're in need of that, please don't be shy. If it's a problem, you need to let us know, because we want your kids to be connected. That's really important to us. And so if the hybrid model is necessary, will there be an effort made to pair siblings on the same cohort day? So believe it or not, that work has already been done. We thought about that ahead of time. So Mr. Prentice, along with Ms. Pratt and Mr. Jones, and I believe Mr. Knowlton, got together and with Heather, and we went through the database, and we, because some siblings, right, don't have the same last name, so we had to group them to households. So that work has been done, and yes, they will be on the same cohort. It just makes it easier for parents and childcare. So we thought that through. Will Chromebooks go back and forth with students? Will paper come home on Fridays in folders? So the one thing that I'm asking teachers to do, and you know, I haven't specifically spoke to Mary Fisher teachers, but certainly the middle school teachers, the first week of school, if we're on site, we're going to send a lot of things home with children. We want to make sure that they have pieces of literature that the teacher might be reading, that they have that copy at home. If there's science materials that need to go home, we're going to put them in baggies, send them home. For the younger children, the elementary children, especially at Mary Fisher, we would hope that when you get your laptop, especially pre-K, K, and 1, that you keep that laptop at home until we switch to distant learning or a hybrid model, that you just keep that at home until we're ready to use it. That'll be dependent upon the teacher. I know the teachers want to show the children how to use the laptops. So we might ask them to bring it in for a day or two, but for the most part, we want to make sure that those devices are at home. For the middle school and the high school students, they're going to have to take them back and forth. And I think they're fairly used to that. Let's see. Thank you. I was worried about my voice being split. Yeah, that was the first thing we thought about. How are we going to do this? I had made a comment that you had mentioned 3 learning models, 100% in school, 100% at home, and a hybrid. But the letter that we got only gave us the option for 100% in school or 100% distant learning, or you pull your child homeschool with your own lesson plan. It asks us to choose and send it back. It doesn't mention a hybrid. Am I understanding it wrong? You're not understanding it wrong. We don't give parents the option to do a hybrid, to come in 2 days a week and then be home for 3 days. The point is to kind of maintain cohorts. So you have the decision that you have to make is if your child's going to be all in on site or all at home distant learning. As far as the hybrid, that we're going to do that in case there is community spread of COVID, or if for some reason the entire state is having some issues and we have to reduce the number of students coming on site for social distancing. But a parent can't choose a hybrid model. And I should have made that clearer on that form. How will speech, reading, and OT be done if it's in a child's IEP with 6 feet in the masks or no masks? So that's where those dividers come in handy for the teacher and students that need to have speech therapy. The good news is there are some masks that actually have the clear front, and I am sure that our speech people and Mr. Jones have already thought about that. So children can see, especially for speech, are going to need to see lip movement. But the shields and the face shields will come in handy. Reading is going to be delivered by a reading specialist that actually goes into the classroom. And so how we got all those cohorts and how we reduced class size is that we took all of our special educators and our reading specialists and we put them in charge of a cohort. However, students, if it's a reading specialist, students that need reading support obviously will be placed in that cohort, or the gen ed teacher that's going to pair with that reading specialist. So those two teachers will share both cohorts, and at some point midday, the reading specialist will go into the other cohort to work with those children. That's more or less how we're going to address, and we're going to maintain that 6-foot distancing. So to be clear, kids are either all in or all out. That is correct. That is correct. Unless there's a medical reason that a child can't be all in, and then we have to make an accommodation for that. And sometimes that happens, right? Even when we're transitioning preschool children in, they start a couple of days a week. But for the most part, it's all in or all out. Parents can't choose the hybrid model. Will parents be required to send in supplies again this year as we have done in the past? You know, we're always grateful to the parents who send in extra tissue and all of that. But Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, you've made sure that we have a lot of those supplies on hand, correct?
We do. We have most everything on hand that we would need. I would say at least to get through the first half of the school year.
Okay, as far as school supplies, every child's going to need to have their own supplies. We can't let them share supplies. So the teachers are either going to put their supplies in a baggie or a pencil box, and that has to stay at your child's desk. And that's why even with art supplies, the art teacher is going to need to figure out how to distribute paints and those kinds of things. Brushes will be the big thing that we'll have to disinfect in between uses. But for the most we always appreciate whatever parents can do, but it is on the district to make sure that children have the supplies they need to learn. Last year, we ran into an issue here at the middle school, and unbeknownst to some teachers, we did have things stockpiled, but they reached out to the community, and the community was extremely responsive. And we get a lot of supplies and materials. However, teachers were unaware that we had stuff in storage that we could fill their orders. So that was a communication breakdown internally, but anything you can do to help, we're not going to turn away the help because we will need it. You know, opening up school comes at a high cost, and it's over budget. It's well over budget. And I'm doing the best I can with the staff that I have, but that letter that went out to the commissioner said, you know, here's our plan. This is how we can do it, but this is what it's going to cost, and where's the money coming from? I'm still moving ahead, making sure the building is and has what it needs, and your children have what it needs, and our teachers have what they need. But the cost of all of this in the long run could be staggering. And so I don't want to, that's not a secret. That's just what it is. I will say, thanks to Shannon and Bill and some other folks on my core team, we had the wherewithal to start to stockpile some things early on. So we're not scrambling right now for masks and those kinds of things because we already have them on site. So I'm happy about that. So let's see. Will parents be required to send in supplies? If the kids take their masks off to eat in the classroom, what is the point of wearing it? I'm assuming that that's what it means. I don't know, Shannon, if obviously kids have to eat and they have to take the mask off. There's no other way for them to eat. That is the directive we've been given from. I could debate about this all day long, but as superintendent of schools, I am required under that required checklist to mandate that masks are being worn. I can't answer that question honestly, but they do have to take their masks off. We're going to ask them to put them in a bag while they're eating, and then put their masks back on, and then go wash their hands. That's going to be the protocol in the classroom. Will IEP requirements be met with distant learning? Mr. Jones, would you like to take that one?
Sure. So, you know, similar to when we had the school closure in March, the language was pretty clear that, you know, to the greatest extent possible, we're adhering to the IEP goals and objectives. We all know that IEPs are written for full school day in-person session. So if we have to go to a hybrid, you know, we'll do the best that we can. If we're back in person, then the IEP will be fully in effect. If we go to 100% distance learning, the IEP does not reflect distance learning. It would essentially be on pause. And again, to the greatest extent possible, we would adhere to those IEP goals and objectives.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
If a child leaves school because they're unwell, how long before they can return back to school if they test COVID? So this is an interesting one, and I'm going to revert to Shannon, but the guidance on this is changing, isn't it, Shannon?
The latest guidance that we have is that a student has to stay out for 10 days. They have to be 24 hours without symptoms and fever-free. And they still suggest that even if you have a negative COVID-19 test, that doesn't mean that you don't have it.
Right.
If you're exposed and somebody's, if you're exposed and the viral load isn't great enough and you still get it, and then your body is processing it, and you still, if you get tested too early, you can still have it and be test negative.
Right.
So they still suggest that people stay out for 10 days.
Right, and that's what we're following right now, and it's how many hours without a fever, and that's without taking Tylenol or any fever reducing medication, correct?
24 hours, yes.
Okay. If a hybrid model becomes necessary, will there be a plan to accommodate some students to continue to come full-time? There are many families where both parents work full-time and have exhausted resources already when school closed in March. And believe me, Ashley, I agree with you. It is challenging at best to manage if we switch to a hybrid model. We are working with the rec department, and the rec department is at least going to be able to try to offer some childcare on site. I will say that on Wednesdays, if we follow the plan as it stands right now, the building will be free of anyone except the custodians, because they're going to be using heavy duty disinfecting and opening windows and really disinfecting the space. So I know on Wednesdays, no one will be there. We are working closely with the rec department though, because we do know childcare is going to be an issue for some families. And that is a problem. And there's nothing I can do to fix that, but make sure that there's some resources that you can access if that's the case. The next one is part of my son's 504 plan is that if needed, he will have sensory breaks in the PT/OT room. Will this still be allowed? We're going to have to figure that out, but I imagine so. We still have our PT/OT folks. And if we can allow that, we will. Hopefully, we're going to be able to do that safely so that can happen. We haven't taken away, I don't believe, all of the PT/OT rooms. Did we, Mr. Prentice? I think we saved that room, correct? You're muted. Heather, could you unmute?
I gotcha. Yeah, we still identified a room for the PT/OT, so that if student needs to receive services, he or she can, but we'll have to decide what that looks like. But there's,
Right. Will extra masks be available? Yes, we will have extra masks. We just bought, we have a lot of cloth ones, and then we bought disposable ones, child size. Didn't we just recently buy those, Bill?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah.
Did they get here?
About half of them are here now. The other half is due in shortly.
Okay, good. Do cohorts take into account for peanut allergies and do take into account for busing? It makes no sense to quarantine a cohort if they're splitting up on buses. Well, there lies the biggest concern, right? We've been asked to create cohorts, and the cohorts have been created for contact tracing, primarily to be able to identify if a student got ill, what cohort they came from, and what bus they came from. We always know who's riding on the buses. And now we'll be able to manage and monitor a smaller group size because cohorts will be outside by themselves in a certain area and won't intermingle very much with other cohorts. So large school assemblies or special activities that we always had at the beginning of the school year won't be possible because we're trying to maintain those cohorts. But as far as the peanut allergies, we'll follow the same protocol, correct, that we do for classrooms,
Yes.
right? The teacher knows, and if there's an issue with children eating in the classroom, we're going to have to make accommodations for that child who has a peanut allergy.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. We are working very hard, but remember that we're working hard so that we can bring your children in safely, and our faculty and staff. I take that very serious. A lot of the community knows I had a close family member, very young, 21, get very sick, near death with COVID. And so I take it extremely serious. Having lived through that with my family, it was just awful. And so I have your children best interest and want to make sure I keep them safe while they're in those facilities. And so I will probably make my directors crazy, making sure that all those protocols are followed. Shannon and I will probably be right on top of those things. And if there's any suggestions or things that you have concerns with, make sure you let your principal know right away so that we can address those things. Will we be notified of a permanent plan? Yes. So the plan that we have right now, if the governor said you have to open school tomorrow, that's the plan we're going with. But as things seem to be evolving and changing, and it's like graduation. We were given a set of rules for graduation, and not once, not twice, but 3 times, the rules changed and we already had our plans for graduation. Luckily, we had a successful graduation and everyone was safe, but the rules kept changing on us, and it was unfair to our graduates that those rules kept changing. But because the whole COVID thing is so unpredictable and unknown, where we have to kind of rely on the directive that we give, and it could be a week before school and something might change. So I'm going to ask you all for your patience, and it's not because I'm not telling you, it'll be because I don't know yet. And I will let you know. If there's anything you know about me from the closure, I am on that call as much as I can be, letting you know what's happening. So yes, you will definitely be notified well in advance. I think Heather, can you scroll me back up a little bit? Oh, wait a minute, I can do it myself.
I think there was one about, are we considering doing online distance learning on snow days?
So that's my hope. That's my hope, that we never close school again for a snow day. Since we all have this now, it would make the most sense. We've gotten no directive on that, although I live in Rhode Island and the governor has said multiple times on the news that long gone are the days of snow days. So I'm imagining as we all have shifted to one-on-one, and we're going to be used to that kind of platform, I can't imagine they're going to count those days as non-school days moving forward. So that'll be interesting to watch, but it makes sense. I think I'm confused about what the school week looks like. Are the kids going back to be in person 5 days, or are we following a hybrid right off the bat? As it stands right now, on July 27th at 7:23 p.m., I have every intention of bringing all students preschool through grade 12 back on campus. That's the directive we were given from the commissioner and the governor. I don't know over the next few weeks if that is going to change. I've heard via the grapevine, so don't quote me. The governor's going to come back out and he's going to give districts some flexibility. What that flexibility looks like, I don't know. But as soon as I know, and if it impacts the plan, you will certainly know. I can easily pull together a parent forum to go over the plan. I can certainly let you know verbally over a call and certainly send you a letter. But for sure, if something changes in that plan, you folks after the Board of Ed will be the first to know. So,
Cameron.
thank you for hosting this meeting in such a timely manner. Thanks, Becky. I think everybody here pulling together, and I don't know if anyone, Shannon, Bill, Chris, Deb Spinelli, she's our athletic director. If any of you have anything to add that we haven't talked about this evening that we should.
Melinda, I just had one, and I think we missed it. If a child has to be out 10 days, will they be allowed to distance learn for that time period?
Yes, yes, that will be our, and you won't have to wait a week so that we can figure that out. We will have to quickly, especially if we know that your child has to be quarantined at home, we were going to have to make a quick accommodation for that. And will there be full day pre-K? So we have one class that is full day pre-K, Tara Brissett's class. I don't know if the assignments to those classes have gone out yet. Have they, Larry? You don't know yet. Okay. That should be coming very soon. There's 14 students slated for that full day pre-K class. And I think last year they selected those students by lottery. More to come on that from the preschool folks, but yes, we will still have that one class of full day pre-K. If students have medical issues with frequent coughs and sneezes, Shannon, do you want to answer that one, or do you want to talk to the parent individually?
I think it's better to talk to people individually. There's going to be a very low tolerance for anybody being ill in the classrooms.
I know.
You're not going to be able to discern what it is.
Yep. Yep. And I think if you have a student that has those frequent issues, contact the nurses won't be back on August 3rd. When will the nurses be back, Shannon?
That first week that we're going back.
The 24th. So
yeah.
Nurses will be on site as of the 24th. You can certainly email your child's principal and give them heads up, and they can make sure that the nurse contacts you when they return. And then you can have that conversation with them. And then I think you missed my question further up. And Bill, I don't know if there's anything about the facility that you want to talk about. Oh, yes, I see it. Bill Birch. There you are.
No, I think the only thing to say about the facility is, that it has been clean from stem to stern since last March. It's possibly the safest building in the whole town right now as far as that goes. And we're going to continue those protocols. But the other important thing is that we have increased the rate of ventilation throughout the complex. The minimum amount of outside air that comes into the building all day long has been increased. So that is one of the biggest things as far as helping to prevent the spread, is that we've increased that airflow and we've increased exhaust to try to keep the building slightly negative to bring that fresh air in.
Good. Natasha asks, will parents be notified immediately if there's a chance their child was exposed to someone who was sent home? And that is an absolute yes. We are going to have to. So more than likely Shannon will alert me. Shannon and I will call the local Department of Health. And this is what we did in March, by the way. Prior to us closing, we had a couple of cases of COVID in the community. And so dependent upon what that exposure was, we called the Department of Health. We had a conversation with them, and then they gave us guidance. Do we need to close today? When it got close to the Friday, the 13th, it was that there were more cases popping up in the state, and myself and the board chair made the decision of closing on that Friday, along with many other districts. The plan is for Shannon and I to call NDDH, explain the situation, and then as soon as they give guidance, then parents have to be notified. Is that correct, Shannon?
Yes.
Right. So that is going to be how we won't tell you. That's the one thing. You know, there's confidentiality rules. We're not going to tell you who had the illness or whose family was exposed, but we will tell you that your child's cohort may have been exposed and that your child's cohort has to quarantine for the 10 days or 14 days. Shannon, is it still 10? Under the quarantine rule? Shannon?
Hello?
Hello, yeah. When we quarantine a cohort, is it for 14 days or 10?
10.
10, okay. All right.
You have to remember an exposure too. We're supposed to be getting more guidance from NDDH regarding what is and what is not an exposure.
Yes, exactly.
So being near somebody without your mask within 6 feet for 15 minutes or longer is considered an exposure. But if people are 6 feet away from each other and they have their masks on, that's supposedly not supposed to be an exposure. But we are awaiting some more information from the Department of Health.
Yeah, and I guess what I need to say to everyone is that because no one really has concrete answers for some of these things, we're trying to seek those out. And it's not, this whole COVID situation, obviously, you know this, it's not black and white. And so we're trying to take guidance from people who know more than we do around the disease and how it spreads. I will say Sue Starkey and Linda Colangelo from NDDH have been very responsive when we call. They get back to us. So it's not like we're going to have to wait a whole day before you hear something. If we're concerned about a situation, I anticipate they'll get right back to us, and then we'll be able to get to the parents very quick. So I don't know if anybody else has any, oops, 6 new messages, hang on. I gotta go back up. What will be the procedure for student drop off and pickup? We may need to stagger that because I anticipate more parents are gonna drive. I'm going to be working with Mr. Prentice and our security team, and we'll get that information out to you in our welcome back packet. But there will have to be obviously a better procedure for drop off and pickup. I don't think the actual routine will change. It's just the timing may change. And so I want to make sure that we have, it's the traffic flow that I'm worried about. Because children won't be able to come off the bus like they normally do, where 2 or 3 buses exit at once. We're going to have to exit 1 bus at a time and let students stagger in the building. So that's going to, that I am anticipating, that's going to cause some traffic backup. So we have to think through that. But more details around, Larry, if you can make yourself a note that we send out to Mary Fisher parents around drop off and pickup procedures.
Right.
And then will there still be temperature testing at school entry? How do we believe all parents are following procedures before bus and school entry? So we started down that road back in April around temperature testing for all faculty and staff and students. So remember Shannon and Bill? And we bought a lot of the laser thermometers. We're getting those, and we've started to buy a freestanding kiosk so that we could take temperature checks from everyone that came into the building. However, the guidance from the state has been that if we keep students waiting outside in line to get their temperature can naturally go up just by waiting outside. So they've actually recommended that we don't do that, but that we do have the capability of taking temperature tests at school regularly if a student has any kind of symptoms. So if a student has a runny nose, you know for sure the first thing the nurse is going to do is check a temperature. How do we believe all parents are following procedures before school? I don't know. And I'm hoping that people take it seriously, and will certainly communicate that to them frequently. It really is important for their child and also for the other children in the school. So there's that. We aren't having any specials. Yes, you are having specials. Teachers, the music teachers and the art teachers will enter the classroom. The students won't leave their classroom to go into a space that has multiple students in it. So you can imagine on a 5-period day at Mary Fisher, you might have 125 students in and out of the art room. We're not going to do that. We're going to have the teacher go into the classroom. And that's where having individual supplies is going to be important. The next one is if someone in the household, like a parent with a cold, I'm assuming they would want the child to stay home, even if the kids have no symptoms of being sick. I'm not sure about that one, Shannon. I don't know how to answer that question. Like if a parent had a cold, and should the child stay home? I mean, I don't know how we answer that question. I'm sure we're going to get those questions from families. Heather?
I've done reading her, hold on.
Can you unmute Shannon? Yeah, Shannon.
I think if household members are ill, it probably would behoove you to keep your children home. It's not mandated at this point, but if you have a cold in your house and you know typically it goes through the house, better that they're home for a few days with their cold, and then they can come back once they're 24 hours without symptoms and fever free.
Okay. And I think that's a case. Hopefully the parents will be comfortable enough to pick up the phone, call the school nurse,
Right.
explain the situation, and try to get guidance from the nurse, or the nurse can call, Shannon can call NDDH for us and get some guidance from them as well. Will art music library be happening in the classroom? So the answer to that is yes. What's happening with PE? PE is going to be outside when possible and feasible. And then we did not use the gymnasium, especially at Mary Fisher. The floor in that gymnasium is specialized, and for us to put furniture on top of, we would have really ruined that floor in there. So we decided that we would keep all of our gyms, half of them, the other half's for storage, but half of them open so that the PE teachers could do appropriate PE activities in the gym by social distancing, because the space is so big. So if they only have a cohort of 12 children or 20 children, they're able to spread out in a large space. So we are definitely hoping that as much PE outside, obviously if it's too hot, we're not going to be able to do that as well, but we're taking that seriously, that we don't lose the art, the music, and library. Now, I will say that music could look different. There might not be a whole lot of singing up front unless it's outside. And you obviously any kind of wind instruments, we might hold back on the recorders until it's safe to use them. But there's certainly a lot you can do with music and a lot of other instruments that children can play. So we definitely want to have those enrichment opportunities for children. Will we know before school starts how many children will be on a bus? We can find that out for you, because once I get that information from families, I will know who's riding on the buses, and then we can give you a guesstimation of how many students are on each bus. That shouldn't be a problem. And then that can translate to how many students we're going to put in a seat. Right now, we have a couple of buses at Mary Fisher, to be honest with you, that run really heavy. But then we have some that are pretty light. And I've asked the bus coordinator to go over those routes to see if we could put some of those buses that have high numbers and reschedule those children onto other buses so that they're not so overloaded and kids aren't on top of each other. In that case, we've had, because it still meets within the guidance of the bus capacity, we've had 3 children on a seat. Well, that doesn't seem in best interest. If we can minimize that and have a couple of children on a seat and keep them separated would be much better. We'll be getting update supply list for those specials. I am thinking that's on the district for the specials if we need specialized equipment. I think teachers are putting in their orders now, Larry, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, with making those accommodations for some materials. I think that is a good question, Jessica. Larry, you might want to reach out to your specialists and ask them if they need to modify their budgets or modify their orders to accommodate kids having individual materials. That's going to be important, especially for art and music. Yes, there will be mask breaks outside of lunch and recess. We're hoping, we're going to tell the teachers that there's a schedule for outside space for each school. Obviously, Larry's going to work with his teachers, but we want kids to have breaks, at least an additional break in the morning and an additional break in the afternoon. And then some of that we have to leave to the good judgment of our classroom teachers who honestly, at the end of the day, know best how to keep our children safe. And if they feel like their classroom is hot and the children need a mask break, we just need to be flexible enough to allow them to use their best judgment and take kids out. Will that minimize some instructional minutes? Sure, but we've got to worry about the health and safety of our children first. And I know the teachers at Mary Fisher are really wonderful, and they are very in tune to their children and their needs. And I honestly believe that if a teacher believes their children need to go out, then they need to go out, even if it's just for a walk around the campus to take off their mask. And we may see larger groups of children outside walking. And we may also see, and I want the community to be well aware of this, we may see teachers out in the community walking. And back in the day, it was taboo for teachers to use their preparation period to be out in the community, taking a drive or walking. I am telling you as superintendent, I am encouraging teachers to do that. Take your mask off, take a break, get outside so that they can come in and feel refreshed so that they can continue their instruction. So if you see teachers walking to Dunkin' Donuts, you'll know why. It's because they're taking a mask break and they need it. And so I just hope the community is patient with that because, you know, in my past experience, folks look at that and say, oh, the teachers are out walking around. The teachers will be out walking around because I'm going to tell them to be out walking around, obviously during appropriate time. Let's see. Will you be asking people who go to the required quarantine states before the kids start school to quarantine? Yes, that is true. That is another document that I do have to send home. I was going to send that home with my newsletter, that if you've traveled out of state prior to you know, the start of school, you do need to quarantine for before coming back. That is state, that's the governor's order. So you do need to do that. And then somebody said, thank you for the great information. Please post or share the wish list. And Larry, I think making sure that gets up on your website. Each teacher has their own supply list. If you can get those up sooner than later, that would be great. And I'm going to tell any family that's on the call, if you can't provide those materials, the school district will provide those materials. So please don't feel ashamed or embarrassed. Just let us know. It's not in my budget. A lot of families are going through some hard financial times because they've lost their positions or their jobs have closed. And we have to be responsive to that. I believe it's the school district's responsibility to be responsive. So, you know, if those are things, you just need to do a really confidential email to Mr. Prentice or your classroom teacher and just say that I'm going to need to have supplies provided by the school district. Please don't worry about that. That is going to happen more than you know this year. And we have a great partner, Jill St. Cyr out there in the community. It Starts at Home. Ian Teague, both of those organizations help us out a lot. So I imagine we'll have access to school materials. And what we don't have, we're going to have to get for your child. And that's it. How is it going to work with kids that have asthma and have had a hard time with the mask? Yeah, we're going to need to get some guidance on that. There is has the Asthma Association provided any kind of guidance around that? Have you seen anything?
It's on a case-by-case basis. And what I keep hearing from the American Academy of Pediatrics is that there are cases of people that have asthma that cannot wear the masks, but they don't tell you how to accommodate those people.
Right, right. I'm going to tell you that I will send out a general information sheet in response to that because we have a lot of students with asthma. Considering all the inhalers we have on site, we know that we have a lot of students with asthmatic conditions.
Mm-hmm.
I will get that answer to you, Shannon, between the next week or so, if we can root out some guidance on that. I think that's going to be important. Will the playgrounds be available and open? Is that during the school day? Yes. The problem is it's going to have to be scheduled. And after one cohort uses the playscape, we have to send a custodian out to wipe down the play area. All the touch surfaces. So that's where that extra sub-custodian is going to be key. If there's any time that I'm going to plead with you folks, we were reduced in our budget. We had to make some staggering cuts in staffing. We made those cuts, but we're operating on a very limited admin team. And we're operating on a very limited, actually, faculty and staff. There's not extra people around. So we're creatively using the staff that we currently have. But there are going to be expenses incurred this year. Some will be reimbursed by the CARES money and perhaps some federal and state monies. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. But it's not that we're nilly-willy spending money, but whatever pennies we spend, it's all to keep our kids safe. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the priority. If we're going back to school, then we're going back to school and have the right equipment and safety measures in place to keep everybody safe. So whatever that costs, we're gonna have to figure it out. And there's that. When will we get the student supply list? If you could get that out shortly, Larry. I do have that on my desk in my office. The supply list for elementary, but you could ask your teachers, and if you could get that within the next, week or two, and get that out, posted on the website, that would be ideal. I know Ellen Pratt's here, so Ellen's probably already all over it to get that done. And how will substitute teachers be screened before they're coming in if a teacher's out sick? So right now I'm interviewing, if substitutes are going to be a problem, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be a problem because every district in the state is looking for substitutes. We have teachers that, for whatever their personal issues are or medical needs are, can't return. We have to cover those classrooms. And I'll certainly let parents know ahead of time what classes will have a substitute in them. That will be Mr. Prentice. He will send out something probably right before school starts, letting everybody know. Right now, I'm trying to interview people and secure some more permanent subs. So we have them so that they're not going between districts, which I think is important. A sub that goes between 5 different districts could be bringing a bag of germs with them. So I'm trying to secure people for longer lengths of time and hope that that's going to be helpful. But if we have a teacher that has to be quarantined for 10 days, obviously I'm going to need a sub for that teacher. So I'm trying to think ahead of trying to secure more substitutes, but that means I have to give them a commitment and commit to work for them. And so I'm in that process now. I think tomorrow I have a couple of interviews of seeing how we can build a little pool of in-house subs so that we don't have to open ourselves up to vulnerability with people traveling between districts. So there's that. And if families can provide extra supplies, can the school drop them? Can they drop them off? Absolutely. You could just donate it to your child's teacher, and then your child's teacher will know what family needs additional supplies, and it could be handled very discreetly that way. When will we find out if who the kids have for teachers? Sorry, I'm new to Mary Fisher this year because St. Joe. Well, welcome from St. Joe's. And if there are any parents on this call from St. Joseph's, I'm sorry your wonderful little school did have to close. I loved working with your principal and I love the staff there. It was a really nice school to work with as a partner in the community, but we welcome you to Mary Fisher. And I believe, I don't know if any of that information went out at the end of the year. We can certainly make sure you know that before the start of school, who your child has. Usually the classroom teacher will reach out to their students before school starts. I don't know, Ellen, do you, can you, Heather, unmute Ellen? Maybe she can help us find out how teachers connect with their students before school start. Ellen?
Yeah, it changes. I mean, right now, because we're reconfiguring classrooms and teachers who are going into those classrooms, we're also reconfiguring all of our lists that we made up when school just ran when school ended. So, but we hope the SLT is meeting tomorrow. So we're hoping to kind of finalize that, I would say in the next week or so. And then we can we usually send out letters. Classroom teachers usually send out letters to families welcoming them and that kind of thing.
Oh, awesome. Good. Thank you, Ellen. And then, yes, great question about teachers. We are also new this year. So welcome, Ashley, and your family as well. Mary R. Fisher is a great school. You know, we have a wonderful new principal. We wish Mrs. Beltram the best in her retirement. She gave 41 plus years to the school district and we will miss her, but we're very excited to have Mr. Prentice, who's been in the district. No, you get it right, Larry. Is it 19 years? 20 years. So he
Close, very close.
Very close. He knows a lot of families in the district, and I would think that you're going to have a wonderful experience. I'm sorry that we're starting off this way. It just always stinks to start off the school year with this kind of flux. We're going to try to bring as much normalcy to your child's day when we're on site so that they feel part of a school community once again. And I'm really looking forward to having the kids back and having some type of a normal routine outside of looking at people in little boxes. And then there's a couple more questions. Is there a plan in place, for instance, where staff is out and there's not enough subs? Will the school go distant learning if there's not enough staff for coverage? That could be a possibility. If we have an outbreak or we have a number of people that are exposed, that could happen. And in that case, obviously that there would have to be some conversation with the commissioner's office too, because you know, it's my job to make sure those classrooms get covered, but if I don't have teachers to cover them, that could be a problem. Right now, the way the plan stands, I need 2 additional substitutes to cover all of the specialist periods because I'm creating more classrooms, and I need an additional one at the middle school. I also will need some subs for teachers who I know because of very significant medical issues will not be able to teach on site. So I do need to get subs for those folks. And when there's a teacher change, we'll certainly let you know that. And so if there's a plan in place, that's going to have to be some internal conversations. We don't have the extra staff that we usually have, right? We usually use our reading specialists or our, other specialists that we have in the building. But now that they're going to be in charge of a cohort of children, we're not going to have that flexibility. That's why getting a couple more permanent subs on staff would be helpful, so that we can, in a minute's notice, we can do that. And will teachers need to get COVID tested before returning to school? We have not been directed to do that. Shannon, have you heard anything about that? We've not been directed.
No, we haven't been directed. And I mean, like I said earlier, you can have a negative COVID test and still have it.
Yeah. So the last one is, there a new head of pupil services to replace Mr. Sugarman? So Mr. Jones, who's in the top, wave Mr. Jones, started in Thompson Public Schools. He's actually on he started February of when?
19.
February of 19. So Mr. Jones has been here for, this is your second year?
I've been, it's a year and a half.
Year and a half, right? Year and a half. And he is a really good, and he is a great guy. And if you have a child with special needs, always know he'll put your child's needs first. That's why we have him here in Thompson Public Schools.
Thank you.
So I think, uh-oh, son's overdue for a 504 meeting. You need to get on that, Larry and Chris.
We're on it.
All right. Contact Mr. Jones's office and he'll make sure that we get going on that. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions. If not, I don't want to take your whole evening. But I did want to make sure that, and if somebody let's see, there's 56 participants. We have 430 students at Mary Fisher, so not everyone has gotten on, and not everyone was at the board meeting. So if you know anyone, we have another session coming up. It's a daytime session. And if somebody has middle school and elementary students, some of the questions are really the same for both levels. Tell them to jump on to any of the middle school sessions as well. That fits their schedule. I can certainly answer any questions to those folks as well. So, yeah, a high schooler, we have an evening specifically for high school where Mrs. Perrette will be on that call. If you want your high schooler to join you, please have them join. I am meeting with the high school leadership team. It's a group of students that we regularly meet with because they're going to have their own questions about high school. I want to address their concerns and their needs. Anyway, I just feel like there's that one high school evening session and then the leadership team. So there's a flyer that went home. If you don't have it, it's on the main page of the website under the COVID section. It'll say Parent Forum Flyer, and it has all the dates there for you. And so, let's see. The end of the snow days. Is this Zoom meeting recorded so it can be reviewed on YouTube by others who did not attend the meeting? And where's Heather?
I did not record this meeting, but I could record a future one so that we could put it on our website.
Okay, that's great. We'll do that for one of the next ones. And I hope this eases a lot of your concerns. I also hope that the information you got tonight will help you make a decision on whether or not you're going to send your children to us and learn on site, or your children are going to remain at home in the safety of their home and will distance learn. I'm thinking that just let us know, please get that information to us. It's going to be really helpful as we try to adjust some of these cohorts and balance out kids on buses. So. And the final question that I'm going to answer tonight is the 2-day an option. It really is not. We want to see the kids on site for all of the days, unless there's an extenuating circumstance. And then I would definitely direct that to your child's principal or Mr. Jones if it's related to special education. So anyway, stay safe. I hope you find a good night to sleep. I hope you have a cold spot. If not, the ice cream trip is well worth it. Good night, everybody.